Everyone, welcome to another exciting edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. In this episode, I'm delighted to be having a second chat with comics author, creator Royden Lepp. Royden, thank you for jumping in and talking with me for a few minutes.
Yeah, nice to talk to you again, Jason. I enjoyed our talk last year. It's good to follow. Hopefully we do it again next year.
Yeah, that would be great. It can be a tradition. Absolutely. May the creating continue by all means.
Sounds
I
good.
first got to know your work through Rust, of course. Were you going to say something there? Did I cut you off?
No, you didn't know.
All right. I was just going to say I got to know you first through Rust, great book series, and you have recently been creating in a series called Jurassic Jeff. I believe the second book dropped about a month ago as of our recording time, May 28th or so. I think that's right.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah, Race to Warp Speed. Is that the subtitle?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty different from Rust, but
Yes. Yeah.
but still really fun to do. And yeah, I not a palate cleanser, like I need to cleanse my palate of books like Rust at all. I enjoyed it, but it was definitely differentiator from what I'm used to writing and drawing, and that's been really fun.
Yeah, well, that's also kind of the cool thing about comics and writing and creating is you can really create a range. And so readers that are enjoying Jurassic Jeff right now, which I hope there are many more books on the way in that series, can then eventually find Rust and other things that you create further on. So it's a great lineage. It's a great way of connecting with readers.
Yeah, I think Rust is a little bit of a more mature story. I mean, it's a dramatic sci-fi. So it's kind of nice to think that readers of Jurassic Jeff would maybe move on and grow up into other books like Rust. Um, the only other direction I can think is fans I had of Rust that were waiting for my next book, and then it's Jurassic Jeff, and they're like, "Wait, what is this?"
I love that though. I love the moment that a creator goes in a different direction and you're like, oh, this is get to see some range, get to see some interesting things. And I'm also a teacher, so I enjoy that range as well.
Good, good. Yeah, people that have access to those other demographics will naturally just say, "Oh, this is for my kids or for my students,
Mhm,
or
mhm.
whatever it would be." So, yeah,
Yeah. Well, the of course the linking there is science fiction. Jurassic Jeff is very much in the world of science fiction storytelling. So I'm curious about how you went about building this world.
yeah. The thing that made yeah, I don't know if this really answers your question, but the thing that made Jurassic Jeff kind of challenging is just that in working in previous stories and storytelling like Rust, even in the science fiction world, you're trying to work with logic and readers and audience are very sophisticated and they're looking for plot holes and stuff like that. In a book like Jurassic Jeff, you got to throw a lot of that stuff out
Mhm.
for the sake of the humor of the world. And so at times when I'm thinking like, wait a second, does Jeff have room to fit that in his spaceship? I'm like, oh yeah, that's right, it doesn't matter. I have to decide where humor and creative license have to take a front seat and logic has to take a back seat, and that's not something I'm used to doing. So in the whole world, and including with the timeline and the world, like I'm taking all liberties where I can, and there's still boundaries. I think boundaries are really important in creativity.
Mhm.
So I can't say I know exactly where they are. I think I know when I cross them. I'm like, oh no, that's too far
Yeah.
for me, for my taste anyway, and see if it resonates with the audience.
Yeah, well, speaking of boundaries and sort of deciding some of those steps, one of the important things I know for young readers is the idea of the series book. I liked this book. Where's the next one? And I've even learned that teacher tip out there, you want book one on your bookshelf, as well as the rest, because readers really want to start with that first book. And so I'm curious about that process and what that's been like to sort of unfold this story across now too, and as I said, hopefully more to come.
Yeah. Yeah, the challenge I had in that, I think, is is who I am as a writer, what I'm most comfortable with, and but what I would desire to have as the parent or guardian of a middle grade reader. My
Mhm.
son's 10, going on 11 soon, so he's is somewhat exiting the middle grade category, though still definitely dabbling in it. And when I'm looking for a book series for him, even books outside of middle grade, some of the chapter books he's looking at, the first question is always like, do we have to start with number one? And because it's a lot easier if you can just jump in the middle, especially on some of these giant series.
Yeah,
I I tell stories very linearly, and I can't, at least right now, that's not a muscle I'm looking to change. Is just that I do tell a story, one, two, three,
hmm
and beyond. And so I had to think about Jurassic Jeff in those terms. I hope that readers can pick up, and I think that they can pick up two and hopefully book three and still be able to just go back and kind of get the backstory. But it does kind of start with, the alien arriving, Jeff arriving on Earth. It kind of has to all start there and set up essentially the entire cast and the joke of the series.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, so that's kind of been the challenge. But the series, the interesting thing with the series is, like, again, a lot of artists say they feel like they're a conduit to their creative work, not really the master of it. And I find that very much as well, that as I dove into the second book and now working on the third book, I'm finding out more about the characters, things I didn't know. I'm like, oh, that's who Hungry is. Now I know that. It's like
yeah.
he's developing seemingly outside of my own control as I sit down to draw, these characters. I'm like, oh, I understand how they would interact now. Like, I'm getting to know them better. It's like a sitcom kind of gelling in the second season.
Yeah, yeah. When you get to spend more time with the characters across a couple of books that way too. So that's got to be fun to cozy up with your own creations in a way.
Yeah, yeah, it's a really weird experience because it feels, these very distinct times. I had these in when I wrote Rust too, where I feel like I'm not creating it. It's just I'm just getting to read it first.
Yeah.
It's a very strange experience as a writer.
Yeah. Now, since you're creating for a younger audience, and with a younger reader in mind, it also has to be sort of a nice moment to be able to be a parent and sort of have a beta reader at home as well, and get to share that with your son. So, it sounds like that's a really positive thing for you as well.
Yeah, I've I dabble in different kinds of jokes, and sometimes I'm referencing things that are kind of outside of the middle grade world, but I still think they're funny. I think they make parents laugh. Some of their references to old movies that, like, their parents would have watched, but like maybe they haven't watched.
Hmm
But I believe in that stuff, that funny is just funny, even when the greater context of a joke might be outside of the audience. I don't want to make jokes that are over the kid's head or anything or inappropriate at all. But I will run jokes like that by my son and just be like, "Hey, is this funny?" And he'll
Yeah,
be like, "Yeah, that was funny." And I'll be like, "Tell me why it was funny to you." Because it's funny to me for a different reason. But he can kind of deconstruct it and be like, "No, no, no, it's funny. I like it. Leave it in."
nice, nice. Love it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned writing for a young audience as well as including some of those sort of moments that appeal to older readers. And that's one of the things that I love about graphic novels too, is that uh, anybody of generally any age can enjoy them to one degree or another. So, by means of a last question before we talk about places where people can find out more about your work and school visits and things of that nature. I'm curious how you kind of balance that for yourself of writing for older readers in mind as well as younger readers.
Yeah, I mean, and as in all of my works, I'm pretty selfish. I'm writing for myself first.
Yeah,
I am, like I said, I'm the first one to read it. I'm the audience member, and I want it. I want to read it and be satisfied for myself. And then I start asking my questions about, you know, I mean, I'm always thinking about who it's for, I guess. I don't ask those too late, but I am primarily just kind of trying to make myself laugh, and then try to take a moment to just let the story come out and put the jokes in and be funny and relaxed. I think there's a lot of creativity that has to kind of come from the gut.
Hmm.
And then you can take a moment to go back and do real editing, self-editing in the process and showing it to people that I think are funnier than me, showing it to my son, showing it to my editors, that kind of stuff. Um, so that's kind of the process. But yeah, like I said, I've come across times where, jokes are just like sometimes I can overhear my son talking. I think that's the fun part now is like my son's at an age I can overhear him with his friends and they're talking about something, they're making jokes about Minecraft or something like that. And I'm just like, I'm just gonna steal that. Like I don't know if that's a broad experience in this age group or with all boys or boys and girls. I don't know what it is, but I'm just going to take it because I think it's broad enough, that at least that age group, you make any jokes around what is contemporary to them. And you
Hmm.
always want to do that. And I want to have a timeless book. I don't want it to be totally dated in the jokes, but uh, whatever. It's the comedy's king. If it's funny, it's gonna stay in the book. That's the rule. So if it's not funny in 10 years, that's too bad.
Well, that's where nostalgia comes in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and comedy is hard. So, love that you're cracking that and involving the whole family in the experience and being smart in all of that process as well. I'm always interested in hearing about the process.
Yeah, yeah. It's been unique with Jurassic Jeff. With Rust, I was very confident in how what kind of storyteller I was and how I would tell stories and what people liked about it. Jurassic Jeff was it was getting to something new, and there was moments of great fear and terror when I was like, wait, can I do this? It felt like writing a first book again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, congratulations on pushing through the fear and expanding your creating. And I promised you that final question, which was where people can find out more, school visits, upcoming titles, all of those sort of things. Anything that you'd like to mention for readers and listeners that way?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean the second book just came out, so it's available wherever you buy books. I don't care where you get it, however you get your hands on it, whether it's the library or asking your school library to carry it. All that stuff is important, and um, yeah, just don't steal it off the bookshelf. That's the only thing I don't want you to do.
True, true.
But other than that, I mean, I can say for sure there's a third one coming
Wonderful.
because I'm working on it right now. So I sure hope it comes out. It may be shouldn't maybe I shouldn't say it's out loud without my editor hearing, or it may be a little later than May of next year because it's been a busy year. But
Yeah.
I'm deep in the middle of it right now, so I'm looking forward to that coming out. I love doing school visits, even in Zoom or whatever it is. It's a new world. You can log in and talk to students. I've done lots of that. I've done lots of in-person visits. I've traveled across the country to talk to students. So anyone that wants to reach out and ask about those opportunities, you can just send me an email at royden.lepp@gmail.com. Or you can connect with me on mostly Instagram is
Mhm.
where I'm most active at Royden Lepp. That's where, if there's going to be upcoming news or anything about Jurassic Jeff, I'm going to post it on there. There's a Jurassic Jeff Facebook page. I try to keep it updated, but I'm most active on Instagram. I try to narrow my social media to just one little spot.
Very smart. Very smart. Yes. Well, Royden, always glad to talk with you. Did we miss anything about Jurassic Jeff or any other projects that you want to mention before we close out?
Not right now, no. I think we covered it. I'm pretty excited about the second book. I can't wait to see what people think.
Yeah, yeah, and already at work on the third, so very exciting stuff.
Yeah,
All right. Well, thank you for the time and the creating, and glad to talk again. As we mentioned earlier, we'll plan another talk sometime in the next year.
sounds great. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thank you.